Welcome to It's Not Well in China. I'm your host, Robin Chang.
And I'm Noah Liu. Today, we're bringing you an extraordinary case that spans 3 countries, 2 decades, and leaves a trail of questions that haunts families to this day.
You know, Noah, when I first came across this story, I couldn't believe how it unfolded. It's about wealth, power, and how they can sometimes shield the darkest of crimes.
We're talking about the case of Lin You, a member of one of China's wealthiest families, and the mysterious deaths of his 2 wives, which occurred nearly 2 decades apart.
But let's start at the beginning with a young Swedish woman named Veronica. The year was 1972, and in Sweden's second largest city, Gothenburg, a baby girl was born into a loving family.
Veronica grew up to be vibrant and full of life. By 1991, she was a high school graduate who turned heads wherever she went. She was particularly skilled at horseback riding, but what really changed her life was a relationship with a Swedish man of Chinese descent.
That relationship sparked something in Veronica, a deep fascination with Chinese culture. She enrolled in Chinese language courses at the University of Gothenburg, and she was a natural. She blazed through every course they offered.
And then she made a decision that would change everything. In 1995, at just 23 years old, she packed her bags and moved to Dalian, China. Now remember, this was 1995. China was still very much in transition, opening to the world but still quite different from what it is today.
I can imagine her parents must have had some concerns about their daughter moving to such a foreign environment.
They did, but what's touching is that despite their worries, they fully supported her decision. This was clearly a family that encouraged their children to follow their dreams.
Now, for those who might not be familiar with Dalian, it's a major port city in northeastern China. Veronica started teaching English there while continuing her language studies. And this is where fate steps in, Noah.
Right, and it's important to note the timing here. That same summer, the owner of the Dalian Wanda football team, Wang Jianlin, was looking to recruit players from Europe. Several Swedish players came to Dalian, including a player named Pelle Blom.
Life in China can be challenging for the families of Swedish players who don't speak any Chinese. Veronica, one of the few Swedes in Dalian, naturally bonded with them and became an invaluable source of support. She often helped with shopping and everyday tasks, easing their transition and making life more manageable. Her kindness led to close friendships, particularly with Pelle Blom and his wife. In time, Pelle and his wife would become witnesses to Veronica's blossoming love story.
And then Robin, she wrote that fateful letter home. Would you like to share what she wrote?
Of course, she wrote, "Now you will hear the hottest thing. I met a wonderful man. He's handsome, nice, humorous, wonderful, fantastic, Chinese." And then she added something significant. He's rich and one of the owners of Wanda. Wanda Group, a Chinese multinational conglomerate founded in Dalian, is best known for its core businesses as a private property developer and entertainment giant, with ownership of Wanda Cinemas and the Hoyts Group cinema chains. In the 90s, the company's Dalian Wanda Football Club, which signed some foreign players under the auspices of Wanda Group, achieved remarkable success in the history of Chinese football.
That man was Lin You, and his family connections were, well, let's just say they were impressive. His sister was married to Wang Jianlin, who would later become China's richest man through the Wanda Group conglomerate.
We should explain something here for our listeners. The Lin family wasn't just wealthy. They were part of China's red aristocracy. Lin Yu's father was a high-ranking military officer who had participated in crucial battles during China's Civil War.
This is fascinating because, as a member of China's second-generation red aristocracy, Lin Yu, along with his sister Lin Ning and brother-in-law Wang Jianlin, leveraged their privileged status in post-reform China to amass significant wealth and enjoy numerous social advantages.
Lin You was 32 when he met the 23-year-old Veronica in her English class. By all accounts, their romance was passionate and sincere. Helle Blom's wife later testified that the couple's feelings appeared to be very genuine. In February 1997, Lin You traveled to Sweden to meet Veronica's family.
And this is where we get our first glimpse into Lin Yu's character. He showed up wearing an expensive suit and a large diamond-encrusted Rolex watch. He brought Veronica's father a high-quality leather jacket and a pair of antique Chinese vases.
The family noticed his somewhat flashy display of wealth, but they were won over by his gentle and humble demeanor. They felt his way of dressing was simply his way of showing he could provide a good life for Veronica. They could see he genuinely loved their daughter.
The couple spent a wonderful time at Veronica's family's vacation home. But by 1998, Veronica had returned to Sweden to pursue an engineering degree at Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg.
This is such a telling detail about Veronica's character. Despite being involved with an incredibly wealthy man, she was determined to build her own career. She believed that with an engineering degree and her Chinese language skills, she could secure an excellent position at a Swedish company's Chinese division.
So, they maintained a long-distance relationship, with Lin You flying to Gothenburg whenever he could to see her. But then, in November 1998, everything changed.
Veronica discovered she was pregnant. According to Lin Yu's later statements, he wasn't particularly eager to get married, but felt he had to take responsibility. His exact words were interesting, Noah.
They were indeed. He said,
那个时候我非常的喜欢维罗妮亚，慢慢的也发现了她身上一些负面的东西。维罗妮亚是一个很感性、冲动，所以我就一直不肯定她对我的感情。虽然我们有讨论过结婚的计划，但是最终没有确定。11月，接到维罗妮亚的电话。 得知她怀孕了，我当时十分惊讶。在那种情况下，我决定承担自己的责任。
At that time, I really liked Veronica, but gradually, I also discovered negative things about her. Veronica was very emotional and impulsive, so I was never sure about her feelings for me. Although we had discussed marriage plans, we never finalized anything. When I received Veronica's call in November telling me she was pregnant, I was very surprised. In that situation, I decided to take responsibility.
Despite his apparent reluctance, when they had their civil ceremony, photographs show Lin You are looking genuinely happy. Veronica, who had actually prepared a white wedding dress, chose to wear a dark blue velvet dress to accommodate her growing belly.
In June 1999, their son Marcus was born. Although Lin You was not present for his birth, he visited frequently in the early days. Notably, his sister, who would later become the wife of the future richest man in China, even traveled to Gothenburg for Marcus's christening. The following June, Lin You returned to Gothenburg to celebrate Marcus's first birthday with Veronica and her family, capturing moments of joy in numerous photos and videos.
But as time went on, Lin Yu's visits became less frequent. Still, Veronica would tell friends this was just because he was busy with work. Perhaps more tellingly, he started delaying the monthly child support payments of 10,000 Swedish kroner, about 850 euros in today's money.
These delays created real hardship for Veronica. She was living with her parents while attending university full-time and caring for Marcus in the evenings. She had no time for part-time work and desperately needed that support.
When she angrily confronted Lin You about the late payments in an email, demanding he pay by the 20th of each month or lose access to Marcus, it marked a turning point. This was when Veronica finally realized her marriage existed in name only.
Lin You later told police,
威胁我，如果不按他要求的数字和期限付钱，将不会那么容易的见到儿子。我感觉他是在利用我对马尔库斯的爱，在满足他的生活要求。
She threatened me, saying if I didn't pay according to her demands and timeline, It wouldn't be easy for me to see my son. I felt she was using my love for Marcus to satisfy her living requirements.
By December 2002, Veronica had had enough. She filed for divorce and sole custody of Marcus. She even tried to make it easier for Lin You, writing to him, "I went to the court for divorce. I also arranged it so that you do not have to pay for Marcus to me. You just have an obligation to the Swedish authority. You pay directly to them."
But Lin Yu's response was explosive. He wrote, "Are you kidding me? You want to take away my power to be a father? I have an absolute right to be a father."
The emails between them grew increasingly hostile. Veronica wrote, "I really want to know what's going on inside your head. I suggest you do not contact us ever again, because it would only make things worse than it already is. Marcus does not need you."
Lin Yu's response was ominous. "Don't force me and bully me too much. I believe I love Marcus more than you do. I will go to Sweden, go have a serious talk with you."
The exchange continued to escalate. Veronica wrote, "If you want to fight with me, it is up to you." To which Lin Yu responded, "I will return to Sweden as soon as possible. I will try my best to hire the best lawyer to process this lawsuit. Marcus is my son forever."
And then, Robin, just as spring was arriving in Gothenburg in 2003, something happened that would change everything.
That's right, Noah. On March 18, 2003, Veronica dropped Marcus off at daycare and headed to her classes at Chalmers University, just like any other day. She was never seen alive again. Veronica had disappeared after dropping her son Marcus at preschool on March 18, 2003. Noah, walk us through what happened next.
So Veronica typically took about 30 minutes on public transport to reach Chalmers University from her home in the Bangkogatan district of Gothenburg. She usually returned home around 5 p.m. to be with Marcus. But that day, she never came home.
Her family and friends tried calling her repeatedly, but her phone just rang and rang with no answer. By 9 p.m., her parents were worried enough to contact the police.
Initially, the police didn't seem too concerned. They took down the missing person information, described her as female 30 years, 168 km tall, dark brown shoulder-length hair, looks good, but that was about it.
Right, and they noted she was last seen wearing a black leather jacket, pink blouse with white chalk-line stripes, and high-heeled shoes. It wasn't until she'd been missing for over 24 hours that they really started acting.
That's when they began a door-to-door search in the Bangkogatan district and brought in police dogs. But here's where it gets interesting. They started tracking Veronica's phone, which was still ringing when called.
And incredibly, the signal led them right back to Veronica's own apartment building. Can you imagine that moment, Noah? The phone they'd been trying to track was right there the whole time.
The police methodically searched the building, with officers stationed at each door, calling Veronica's phone and listening for the ring. At 8:05 p.m. on March 19th, they heard it, coming from an apartment on the first floor.
When they broke in, they found Veronica in the bathroom, surrounded by blood. She was already dead. But here's where the story takes another turn. This wasn't her apartment.
No, it belonged to a 44-year-old Chinese man named Tang Kingshong. He'd been living in Sweden for years, working hard and sending money back to his family in China. He and Veronica's parents were neighbors, though they only exchanged nods in passing.
Tang's English and Swedish weren't great, so Veronica, who spoke Chinese, would often help him with important documents. By all accounts, she was always happy to help.
But now Tang was nowhere to be found. His passport and clothes were gone, and he hadn't shown up for work on March 18th, the day Veronica disappeared. He hadn't even called in sick.
So naturally, Tang became the prime suspect. Police thought he might be trying to flee the country, and his phone signal was being picked up near the Danish border in southern Sweden.
But then attention shifted to another suspect, Veronica's husband, Lin You. Her parents told police about the bitter divorce proceedings and Lin Yu's aggressive emails. Veronica had even told classmates she was worried he might try to take custody of Marcus.
And here's what raised red flags for investigators. Lin You was actually in Gothenburg at the time. He was staying at the Sheraton Hotel downtown, but unlike his previous visits, he hadn't told Veronica or her family he was coming.
Police arrested Lin You on March 19th, the same day they found Veronica's body. But during questioning, he had an airtight alibi.
That's right, on March 18th, the day Veronica was killed, Lin You had spent the entire day with a Swedish businessman, visiting various locations. They had dinner, drinks, and then spent time at a casino until late at night. Multiple witnesses and surveillance footage confirmed their movements.
After 5 weeks, with no evidence linking him to the murder, the district court released Lin You. He left Sweden the very next day, accompanied by his lawyer.
But the case was far from over. On April 30th, during a routine canvass of the neighborhood, a woman walking her dogs mentioned something odd. Her dogs had been very interested in a patch of grass near Tang's apartment balcony around the time of the murder.
Police excavated the area and found a body wrapped in a red blanket. It was an Asian male matching Tang's description, and DNA comparison with Tang's son in China later confirmed it was him.
So now police had 2 murders in one location. The big question was Tang an innocent victim? Or had he been involved in Veronica's murder and then been killed by an accomplice?
Forensic evidence provided the answer. Bloodstain analysis in Tang's apartment showed that Veronica's blood appeared after Tang's, meaning Tang had died first. This almost ruled out any possibility that he was involved in Veronica's murder.
The police theory was that both murders were committed by the same person, someone who killed Tang first, then used his apartment to lure Veronica in, possibly by claiming Tang needed her help with something, before killing her too.
Police once again suspected Lin You, this time of hiring someone to commit the murders. And Veronica's father provided what he believed was the motive.
He said, and I'm quoting here, "Maybe it was because my daughter demanded divorce and custody of Marcus." According to the legal documents, Lin You would have to split a large portion of his assets. Because he was a very wealthy man, he didn't want a divorce, and he wanted to get Swedish citizenship through marriage. But his citizenship application was rejected because he didn't spend enough time in Sweden. Also, a wife wanting divorce might be hard for a Chinese man to accept.
The investigation revealed more suspicious details. A week before Veronica's death, on March 11th, Lin You, who was in China at the time, had arranged to fly to Germany with a company employee for a boat show and business meetings with a German company.
But when police contacted the German company, they said that while Lin You had set up the meeting, he never showed up. Investigators believed Lin You and his employee had flown from Germany to Gothenburg and checked into the Sheraton Hotel without notifying Veronica's family.
After expanding their investigation, witnesses reported seeing Lin You walking from the Sheraton Hotel to near Veronica's home. He was also spotted lurking around Marcus's preschool.
But they still needed that crucial piece of evidence linking Lin You to both murders. And then the forensics team made a breakthrough.
They found blood from a third person on a telephone line splitter in Tang's apartment bedroom. DNA analysis showed it belonged to an East Asian male, but it didn't match Lin Yu's DNA.
This led police to suspect that this blood belonged to the company employee who had traveled to Germany with Lin You, the actual killer who had injured himself during the murders.
And then they found something even more damning. When the forensics team thoroughly searched Lin Yu's hotel room at the Sheraton, even though several guests had stayed there since, and it had been cleaned multiple times, they found a crucial piece of evidence.
On the bathroom floor, they found blood that matched the DNA of the unknown person from Tang's apartment. This evidence strongly connected Lin You to the suspected killer.
And it was around this time that Marcus, now almost 4 years old, received a birthday present from his father, as if nothing had happened.
Based on the evidence they had gathered, Swedish investigators developed a theory about how the murders were carried out. Noah, can you walk us through what they believed happened?
They believed Lin You had planned the murders while still in China. He used a business meeting in Germany as cover to get Schengen visas for himself and the killer. After landing in Germany, they immediately headed to Gothenburg.
And this is where Tang comes into the picture. Lin You knew Tang from his previous visits to Gothenburg and was aware that Veronica often helped him with documents. This made Tang's apartment the perfect location for the crime.
The theory was that the killer easily gained access to Tang's apartment by claiming to be Lin Yu's friend. After killing Tang, he waited for Veronica to return from school, either tricking her into entering or forcing her in.
After murdering Veronica, the killer left her body in the bathroom but buried Tang in the backyard. He took Tang's passport, phone, and clothes to create the illusion that Tang had fled.
The investigation revealed that the killer then went to Lin Yu's hotel room at the Sheraton to clean up his wounds, which is how his blood ended up in the bathroom.
Swedish authorities asked Lin You to return to Sweden for questioning, but he refused, claiming innocence. He did, however, try to gain custody of Marcus through his lawyers. The civil court awarded custody to Veronica's parents instead.
With Lin Yu's refusal to return to Sweden, police began tracking down the suspected killer. Working with German and Chinese authorities, they identified him as a man named Zhang Jiansong, who had traveled to Germany with Lin You as a company employee shortly before the murders. Zhang returned to China soon after Veronica and Tang were killed.
In late November 2005, Swedish police flew to China to investigate further. They planned to interview 3 people: Lin You, the suspected killer Zhang, and this is interesting, Lin Yu's secretary and girlfriend Lily.
Lily is a crucial figure here because she had booked the flights to Germany for Lin You and Zhang through a travel agency. Plus, she had been writing all of Lin Yu's English emails during the divorce negotiations with Veronica, as Lin Yu didn't use English.
The meeting with Lily was, well, it was something else. She showed up wearing a baseball cap and sportswear, very Western-style clothing. But her attitude was incredibly uncooperative.
Right. She responded to almost every question with, "I don't know." When asked if she had booked the flights for Lin You and Zhang, "I don't know." When asked about the purpose of their European trip, "I don't know."
The Swedish police were frustrated by her lack of cooperation, but also concerned for her safety. They suspected she might have been deeply involved in planning the murders, which put her in a dangerous position.
Lin You was detained in a Chinese prison following an agreement between Chinese and Swedish law enforcement. By the time Swedish police arrived and interviewed him on December, he had already been in custody for over a month. During the interview, Lin You maintained his innocence and denied all accusations. Shortly after, Chinese authorities released him, but he refused to return to Sweden for trial.
Zhang, the suspected killer and one of the 3 individuals the Swedish police sought to interrogate, had vanished without a trace. Despite assistance from Chinese law enforcement, efforts to locate him were unsuccessful. Because there is no extradition agreement between China and Sweden, Swedish police issued an international arrest warrant for Lin You, initiating an international manhunt that would last nearly a decade.
By 2007, Marcus was 8 years old. He had always believed his mother died in a car accident. Then one day, he discovered a videotape at home showing news reports about his mother's death and learned that his father was likely responsible for her murder.
But the story wasn't over. Far from it. On January 10, 2013, Lin You, now married to Lily, was vacationing at their luxury villa in Koh Samui, Thailand.
Robin, we're not just talking about any villa here. This was a jaw-dropping $6.5 million estate sprawling over 54,000 square feet, complete with a sparkling pool and pristine gardens. And get this, it even came with its own private butler. But for this trip, they actually declined the butler service, opting for more privacy. The best part? The estate services were managed by none other than the nearby Four Seasons Hotel. Pretty impressive, right?
Absolutely, Noah. And here's where things take a dramatic turn. On January 18, Lin You called the Four Seasons Hotel in a panic. He claimed he had fallen asleep the previous night and woke up to find his wife had drowned in the pool. The hotel staff wasted no time and immediately contacted the police.
When police arrived, they found Lin You holding his dead wife's body crying, but something wasn't right. The body was already rigid, indicating Lily had been dead for at least 8 to 10 hours.
Lin You told the police that he and Lily shared 2 bottles of red wine that night. He became so intoxicated that he passed out, and it was Lily who called the hotel for help. The hotel sent the butler to assist Lin You to bed.
Exactly. Lin You said that it wasn't until the next morning when he woke up that he discovered Lily had drowned in the pool. The butler corroborated Lin Yu's account, and there was evidence confirming that they did, in fact, drink 2 bottles of red wine that night.
But the autopsy revealed something disturbing. There was no water in Lily's lungs, which you'd expect in a drowning victim. Instead, they found bruising around her neck, suggesting she had been strangled or suffocated face to face before being placed in the pool.
The medical examiner's report was clear. The victim died from asphyxiation due to neck compression or heavy pressure, indicating homicide.
And Lin You had suspicious injuries too. Several scratches on his shoulders that he claimed were self-inflicted while swimming, but the forensic examiner immediately recognized them as defensive wounds from someone fighting back.
You know what's particularly suspicious about this, Robin? Lily's family revealed that she couldn't swim. They said she would never go swimming alone at night.
And there were other red flags. Lily's parents tried to contact their daughter and son-in-law repeatedly from January 18, but couldn't reach them. Lin You didn't inform them of their daughter's death until late on January 23.
Lily's brother-in-law made some notable observations. He pointed out that Lin You claimed they had shared 2 bottles of wine and that he had passed out. However, Lily rarely drank, although she could handle alcohol well. He questioned how someone like Lin You, who had experience running a nightclub, could be rendered unconscious until morning by just 1 bottle of wine.
The local police seemed convinced it was a straightforward case of murder, and they arrested Lin You. But then something strange happened. After Lin Yu's arrest in Thailand, things took an unexpected turn. His lawyers petitioned Thailand's Crime Suppression Division, claiming he was being treated unfairly by the Koh Samui police.
This triggered something significant. The Royal Thailand Police formed a special fact-finding committee and assigned the case to their Department of Special Investigation, or DSI.
And here's where it gets interesting. The DSI took over the case in April and immediately started criticizing the Koh Samui police's work. They claimed there were major errors in evidence collection that made much of it inadmissible.
Shortly after, the DSI dismissed the case, citing insufficient evidence to prosecute. But a reporter from Thailand PBS, who was covering the case, suggested something else might have been at play. Possible police bribery.
Lily's family refused to accept this conclusion. They went to Thailand and filed a civil case in the Koh Samui court, which was accepted. The court issued an arrest warrant for Lin You, but he was released on bail after paying about $140,000.
Technically, he wasn't supposed to leave Thailand while on bail, but somehow he managed to return to China anyway.
Then, on January 30, 2014, Chinese New Year's Eve, this story exploded on Chinese social media. A user on Tianya, China's largest online community at that time, posted about a family dispute, mentioning that their sister-in-law's sister had died in Koh Samui.
Another user followed up with a post titled "New Evidence in the Swedish and Thailand Wife Murder Cases of Wang Shitsung's Uncle." And that's when Chinese citizens learned who Lin You really was.
Right. He wasn't just a wealthy businessman accused of killing 2 wives. He was the brother-in-law of Wang Zhanlin, China's richest man, and the uncle of Wang Shitsung, one of China's most famous socialites.
We should explain who Wang Shitsung is for our listeners. He's the only son of Wang Zhanlin and Lin Yu's sister, Lin Ning. Born in 1988, he became famous for his flamboyant displays of wealth, frequent girlfriend changes, and outspoken criticism of celebrities.
He was so well known that BBC even featured him in their documentary series Secrets of China. But interestingly, this usually outspoken figure would fall completely silent whenever anyone asked about his two aunts, who had met untimely and tragic ends.
Some people noted that Wang Shitsung had been close to his uncle since childhood. After the cases became public in China, Wang Shitsung tried to divert attention by launching a major giveaway on Weibo, China's version of Twitter. The grand prize was a trip to a luxury resort his father's company had just opened.
But the Swedish police, upon learning of Lily's death, saw their earlier fears realized. They had worried about her safety 8 years before, and now she was dead.
Then, in June 2014, something remarkable happened. Lin You, now 51, and traveling with his third wife, a 21-year-old yoga instructor, attempted to enter the United Kingdom.
He was using a passport under the name Lin You, but UK Border Control's facial recognition technology identified him as the internationally wanted suspect Lin You.
He was extradited to Sweden and held in a Gothenburg prison awaiting trial. The investigation into Veronica's murder was reopened. In October 2015, Swedish police asked Chinese authorities about the whereabouts of Zhang, the suspected hired killer.
Chinese police reported that Zhang had been missing for several years, with no traces of travel or consumption records in their system. Some speculated he had been silenced.
It had been 11 years since Veronica's murder. Her family never imagined they would see Lin You face trial.
In mid-January 2016, Lin You was charged with 2 counts of inciting murder, 1 for Veronica and 1 for Tang. He denied all charges, appearing in court in expensive suits and represented by 3 lawyers.
This trial was particularly difficult for Veronica's family because it was the first time they learned the details of her death, how she had fought for her life until her last breath. Despite this, Veronica's father maintained remarkable composure, even nodding politely to Lin You, who nodded back.
The prosecutor, Ulrika, argued that Lin Yu's motive for murder was clear. Veronica wanted a divorce, but he didn't want to split his assets or lose his path to Swedish citizenship through marriage. Plus, Swedish law meant he could lose both substantial wealth and custody of Marcus in the divorce.
The prosecution believed Lin You had Tang killed to use his apartment as the murder scene and create the false impression that Tang had killed Veronica.
Lin You insisted he had never met Tang, but Veronica's father contradicted this, saying Lin You had met Tang several times at our building. They were both from China, after all. Another Chinese resident confirmed that Lin You had met both of them.
After 2 months of trial and testimony from over 40 witnesses, the jury reached a verdict. They found Lin You guilty of inciting Veronica's murder, noting the particularly cruel and cold-blooded nature of the crime. He was sentenced to life in prison.
However, they found insufficient evidence to convict him of Tang's murder, suggesting Tang's death might have been outside Lin Yu's control.
Since Marcus was the Lin family's only grandson, Veronica's family had to move to an undisclosed apartment, fearing Lin You might send someone to take the child. The court also ordered Lin You to pay 660,000 kroner, about $63,000, in compensation to Marcus, since he had abandoned his son for 13 years.
But this wasn't the end. Lin Yu's 3 top lawyers found what they called a loophole. They discovered that before the verdict, a juror had posted personal opinions about Lin You on Twitter, potentially compromising the trial's fairness.
The court accepted this argument and declared the previous verdict void. A new judge was appointed, a new jury assembled, and Lin You faced a second trial.
Veronica's father remained optimistic, thinking this was just a procedural correction to fix a legal flaw. He expected the same result.
But on September 10, 2016, the new verdict shocked everyone. The court found insufficient evidence for both charges of inciting murder. Lin You was released.
The very next day, September 11, Lin You boarded a flight to China under his lawyer's protection.
The Swedish prosecutors appealed and demanded a retrial. They sent court summons to Lin Yu's address in China, but he never responded. Once again, Swedish law enforcement issued an international arrest warrant for him.
By 2021, 18 years after Veronica's murder, Swedish television produced a 6-episode documentary called Veronica and the Chinese Millionaire. It detailed Veronica's life and the entire investigation and trial process.
Marcus, who was barely 4 when his mother died, had grown into a young man. At 22, he appeared in the documentary, wanting to contact his father and learn the truth about his mother's death.
Marcus had been raised in Sweden by his grandparents, never having contact with his father or any relatives on his father's side. He wrote a letter to his father, had a Chinese friend translate it, and sent it to Lin Yu's company address in China. He received no response.
Through friends searching Chinese internet, Marcus learned that his father was now the founder and CEO of a biomedical technology company called Fountain Valley in Dalian.
At company events, Lin You would tell a story about having a daughter with genetic defects, who was miraculously cured through immune stem cell therapy. He claimed this inspired him to start the biomedical company to help others.
With the help of a Chinese resident in Sweden, Marcus tried calling Lin You on camera. The person who answered sounded remarkably like Lin You, but insisted they had the wrong number.
It's heartbreaking, Noah. First, Marcus lost his mother's love through murder, and when he finally gathered the courage to explore his Chinese heritage and seek answers, his father rejected him again.
Then something unexpected happened. On October 7, 2023, Lin You was detained by Chinese law enforcement.
And on March 14, 2024, he was formally arrested in China for murder charges.
Some speculate this arrest was connected to political shifts in China's upper echelons. The victims' families have received emails from Chinese police requesting investigation information, which Swedish prosecutors have confirmed.
A Chinese lawyer has stated that Lin You is more likely to be tried in China than extradited to Sweden. If convicted, he could face life imprisonment or even the death penalty, depending on the evidence and circumstances.
When Marcus heard this news, he said something profound. "I don't want my father to die, or I'll never get my answers."
Perhaps the only consolation in this nearly 20-year-old case is that Marcus, who lost his mother so tragically, has grown into a healthy, happy young man. He bravely faces his past while living positively in the present.
He's currently pursuing an economics degree, and I think I speak for all of us when we say we hope he finds peace and success in his life.
Thank you for listening to It's Not Well in China. I'm Robin Chang.
And I'm Noah Liu. Stay safe, everyone.